Ladies and gentlemen, Tattoo Advance here, and welcome to a news update. Now today we're going to be going through, first of all, the progress of the 3.0 Avocati build, and then we'll move on to some of the other features that Star Citizen are planning on adding and some of the tech that's been introduced as well. So starting off with the progression towards PTU, in last week's ATV we had 30 bugs surrounding the shopping and cargo, 113 bugs for the tasks and missions, we had 20 for travel and mobiGlas, and then we had 66 for performance and stability. I think there was about 57 checked in. There was around about 750 updates pushed to that particular branch. So there's a lot been going on, and I should imagine there's been some fluctuation, and we can see that in this week's. They delivered the information this week slightly different than they did with the last week. They did break it down into these individual areas. We currently have 197 this week, so that's 89 have been completed. Now so far from what we can see, 35 of them are major blockers, so that's not that bad when you look at it. If they've actually achieved pretty much 100 in the space of a week or so, and I should imagine that they should get through them quite quickly. Now something else you've got to keep in mind, that the PTU is very similar to sort of like a development branch. When we receive it, it will come with bugs and they will push it with bugs. The key thing for the PTU is to make sure that it's stable enough from a performance and crashing point of view that it can be released to a larger testing audience. Now once that's done, then obviously it goes onto the live branch. So the numbers do look big on face value. When you look at them, it does look quite a lot, but I think if they focus on some of these criticals that are going to prevent it to going to the PTU, and 35 of them is not a lot by any means, then we hopefully should see it, I should imagine, in the next few weeks or so. I mean, that's sort of guessing based on that 35. It's only a guess. It would be nice to see it this part of Christmas, undoubtedly, particularly on the PTU, at least starting on the staggered rollout. But a lot of this is guessing, I suppose. Star Citizen have also told us that we're going to be seeing automated turrets on some of the landing zones, and this is to prevent people griefing to some extent. I'm not quite sure how they're going to stop people crashing in to each other, either ship on landing pads, but we'll have to wait and see how that works out. We know to start with in 3.0 there's probably going to be around about 6 NPCs that allocate missions out. In this week's ATV we got an update on quantum travel as well. It's nice to see that it's actually calculated quite well, I would say. The animations are going to be changing slightly and changing the effects, so there's sort of more of a build up going into quantum. And they did show quite a while ago there also will be quantum travel background. I don't know if you remember, we saw this a long time ago. When you're actually flying past different systems, you would actually see it in the quantum travel as well. So I imagine they're going to probably be adding that later on down the line once they've refined this new travel mode, and once we've sort of tested it out a little bit more heavily, I should say, in 3.0, and then we should see iterations to that to make more improvements as it progresses. We've also had quite a big overview on the procedural tech. Pretty significant. A lot of people were questioning right at the start when Star Citizen were talking about making 110 systems, each system having many planets, many landing zones. How are you going to make all the assets for this? Is it viable for a team? Well, I say a team, 350, 400 in size. Sounds viable when you say it like that, but it would take them years and years to populate all these planets with assets if they were handcrafting them. So procedural tech is needed to some extent. Obviously we're all got that same thing in mind, that as long as it's not replication, every planet's exactly the same, and that's not what we want to see. We want to see different and rich assets and different landing zones. They also gave us some other information on some of the cities as well, which I thought was partly my concern when I saw it. When we saw the procedural cities, my first thought was, okay, great, yeah, it does look pretty cool, but once you've flown over it once, it's just going to be, you're just flying to the landing zone, it's not really going to mean much. What the plan is further on down the line is clearly to add some other landing zones, but also make it so you can actually travel between the actual landing zones, and also make it so you might actually need to have a land vehicle to travel to another zone inside of that city. In the same way that if you went to London and you landed on a helipad, or you landed at Heathrow, Gatwick, wherever you landed, you would then obviously have to travel in a car to get to that next destination. You obviously wouldn't be landing a plane anywhere you wanted. And in the same way that Star Citizen is going to focus the same way, that if you do land on a landing pad, there could also be some travelling as well. I like that. I think it's pretty cool. It's one way to get around that situation of having a planet that makes you go down to the planet and makes you use a vehicle. It does bring purpose, definitely, to some of the land vehicles as well. And I guess the last thing, I haven't really gone into any detail as yet. We did talk briefly of the Pioneer. couple of weeks ago in my last video now. But the Pioneer base building, we know that now, fantastic. The Game Changer, I suppose it was a game changer just to some instance. For me, the game changer wasn't the ship, it was the land. Star Citizen did say at the start the intention is once you've built up enough funds, i.e. maybe in a large organisation or something like that, that there would be the possibility of owning mining operations or larger stations, and that was projected to be sort of after the launch period. And from what we've been seeing, if you rewind back maybe 2 or 3 months, we've seen the technology that they've produced around the procedural generation of stations, how the modular system works. I should imagine someone just thought, why don't we just make a ship that can place it down on a planet? Although it is a feature that is definitely coming in earlier than was predicted, I don't think it actually affects the development process, i.e. I don't think it goes too further afield from what they're already doing. And it also resolves some other issues as well, particularly around adding more value to the planets and adding more reasons for people to go down to the planets and explore, and to also maybe find old stations, find stations that are active, to protect stations. Now you will be able to have a station inside of UEE space. We've seen the claims that you get, the land claims. One of them comes with the ship that has already been specified as that role. Now that land claim would be defended by the UEE. Obviously you can have additional defenses if you choose to. That's not stopping you putting your base down or your mining operation on a planet outside the UEE. Obviously you would not have that defense, and then you might have to hire mercenaries or people inside your organization or your friends to defend it, all depending on how viable it is, I suppose, and what the resource you are defending. I think that adds a fantastic line of gameplay. I think it's less about the ship, more about the land, because that opens up the opportunity here and it opens up massive gameplay. And I think it's a good move. It seems like an easy thing for Star Citizen to introduce based on the technology journey they've been going on. So good move from Star Citizen, I suppose. I think most people who follow Star Citizen are feeling the pressure a little bit. We all wanted to see 3.0 much earlier than it's been predicted, and we all know that is dragged on as well. Star Citizen have seen the impact that having this very, very prolonged development release 3.0 has taken a considerable amount of time, and this puts pressure on Star Citizen obviously, because we would like to see that release cycle. It puts a big pressure on the backers and the people supporting the game as well, because we all need that reassurance, we all need that content. We want to be a part of the journey. 9 to 12 months is a very, very large gap for release. Chris Roberts said before, once this release goes out, the micro patcher will be there as well, which I think is really, really important, because at the moment the patches is pretty much the whole game, which is too big for the people that maybe don't have the bigger connections. And particularly if Star Citizen at some point it can be doing patches every 1 or 2 days, maybe on Avocati or something like that, and you've got to download the whole game client like you did before, it's not really feasible. So the micro patcher will help, and the plan will be to do releases every 3 months and stick to them. And I think they need to do that to stabilize, you know, the community and the constant progression, and just to keep people's motivation and driven towards Star Citizen. Last thing on the agenda today, guys, if you're looking to join a Star Citizen organization, check out the link in the description below. That's everything for me. Thanks for listening, and don't forget to subscribe. Bye now.